Rather than feeling I was doing 3D wrong, I was like, no, I'm doing 3D right. I think Blender is difficult, but because I think sort of kooky, I can do weird things. I can't put order in anything at all to save my life. The whole 80s Greeble aesthetic, which is very forgiving for a process where you just smash things together and it doesn't matter. That's the power of 3D in my mind. Yeah, but then I would have to cheat. And I'm like, all of it is cheating.
Everything's a cheat.
If it takes you a year to build a perfect something, do that. I don't want to, so I do something else. Spend more time learning to observe than you spend learning what the buttons do. Because if you can't observe, none of the buttons are going to help you.
It's your eye, it's your vision.
What happens when you stop binging TV shows you like and instead start building worlds you like? You can get to express anything, which is insane. Don't make a teapot, don't make a donut, make R2-D2. Go with the path that excites you, because that's the best fuel and armor you have against the problems on your way to becoming what you want to be.
Hey, Rasmus.
Hello.
Rasmus, you're so professional. You've got your own...
Why would you wear anybody else's clothes? I don't understand. I've seen some people wear Nike, and I'm like, who?
Yeah.
I didn't know that was your name. The first time I was wearing this, I was mad embarrassed, but I'm like, you know what? Gotta represent, because,
You're absolutely right.
We're all human, right?
We've got a few guests that are in live, so they're just watching us hang out and chat. We've got some questions from them at the end, hopefully.
Sure.
But it's really nice to meet you.
You too.
And I did you really dirty the other day. I put a video up of me saying we've got Rasmus on the show. He's a Blender artist, but you're so much more than that. So I apologise that I only said Blender artist. You're art director.
However you want to advertise it, yeah, up to you.
Welcome to the VFX Process. Firstly and foremost.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Can you just give us a brief introduction of who you are and what do you do?
All right. Yeah, my name is Rasmus. I am Danish born and raised, and I grew up in a creative household with a musician dad and a hairdresser mom. There was no issues being creative and weird. I attended design school here in Copenhagen, 5-year course, and I thought I was going to make flyers for nightclubs as a grown man, because I thought graphic design must be what was the thing, right? When you go from being a nerd to growing up, you become a graphic designer. And then at some point, I remember I was on forums called Sijun back in the days, and I realized you can just keep on drawing dragons and spaceships, actually. And then I did that, and then I realized, okay, that's a thing. And then I got an internship at IO Interactive, started there. Hitman, became an art director on Kane Lynch 2, Dog Days, did that for a while. Moved to Canada for a while, started up a studio there, Square Enix Montreal. Moved to Ubisoft. I wanted to do immersive stuff. Came back to Denmark with my family. And back at IO, doing Hitman and a bunch of other stuff. And now Project 007. So
amazing.
Franchise art director now on that project. And then on the side, a few years back, thanks to Jama Jurabayev and Ian Hubert, I saw some Blender tutorials and different things. And I was in a creative rut for a while. I'd been working on refining and focusing on my art direction and presentation, and had forgotten the old craft a little bit. And then I rediscovered it with Blender and discovered that I probably do well being a creatively chaotic thinker in a otherwise fairly structured environment. So I think Blender is difficult, but because I think sort of kooky, I can do weird things, and I can't put order in anything at all to save my life, but I can sort of think a little bit diagonally in the software.
Well, yeah, your personal stuff, you go by the name Technouveau on social media. And I think that's where we first saw the Star Wars themed spaceships. But looking back on your art station, you were doing kind of like some vehicle, like Photoshop art, like modifying cars and things, which is kind of like where I started when I was about 14 years old, kind of self-teaching myself. Yeah, I've always been into cars and things like that. Can we just talk a little bit about, you getting into the world of 3D?
I've always been cyber tuning as well. Cars, airplanes, inverting the wings on airplanes, lowering the cars.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 10, 15 years ago. And I never became part of a community online. I had Sijun and then conceptart.org at the time, a forum called Eat Poo, which was an art forum. Relax. And stuff like that. So that's really for the old geezers like me. We were like, yeah, we remember, but that's a long time ago. I feel like looking back, I'm like, I was struggling a bit to make it expressive enough and to make it good enough and to make it effective enough, like effective brushstrokes and whatnot. But I had always been doing that and always been attracted to hard surface stuff, vehicles, technical stuff, total nerd. And as I mentioned, having spent a lot of time focusing on art direction and theory and application and thematics, all that adult stuff in a sense, right? Like taking it seriously and being very organized about that. And as I mentioned, then I saw Hubert's quick tutorials where he was doing some texture mapping stuff that I was doing when I did background graphics for Kane Lynch 2. As an art director, I was sitting there in Max doing quick and dirty photo bash onto 3D modeling to place in the background of the game. And I was like, that's what I do. And I saw his results and I was like, oh my God, okay. So I felt a sense of my methods were probably not that mad after all. And rather than feeling I was doing 3D wrong, I was like, no, I'm doing 3D right. Yeah. Unfortunately, my daughter got sick and she had a problem that was fixable with medicine. And later she grew out of it completely. So she's fine.
Brilliant.
But during that period, it was rough and HR sent me home. And in that space, I excused myself and booted up Blender and discovered that creative nerve still existed. And I was like, okay, having carried all this, I'm going to be fine because I'm not broken. I was just missing some things. And that's when the Star Wars thing really happened, because that's like childlike glee. I visit that world in my imagination with childlike glee. What do you call it? Like My Little Pillow, right?
Yeah.
Star Wars design.
Nice
rules.
and comforting.
Exactly. And so by going in a nice and comforting way, I had the gusto to sort of learn the software and deal with it. Because, oh my God, Blender, oh my God, what? Not made by artists, I would say. So it was a tough learning curve, but pushing through. So yeah, I guess in a sense, human drama, problems, real life shit happens. And then coming into this chaotic space and trying to look for a stick to lean on or something like that. And then that rebirthed a new axis of art, if you will. So that's how it started.
Talking of like ship design, where do you start when designing a ship? Do you put down things on PureRef? Do you sketch? What's the process look like for you, Rasmus, when you're designing a vehicle or a spaceship or even a world itself?
World building aside, art direction aside, because that's a much bigger topic. I'll be happy to dive into some of that. But from a ship point of view, the first ship I did, I was drawing some sketches first. I haven't sketched anything since. So I start in 3D. And I fool around there with basic shapes and basic layouts. If the basic shape becomes a part that I can use, I put it aside onto my kit, and that becomes part of the bank. And of course, the Star Wars aesthetic, and particularly the whole 80s Greeble aesthetic, which is built from store-bought objects a lot of the time, off-the-shelf pieces, cups, bottles, whatever, which means the aesthetic also lends itself very well to intersection, because you would cut it out and glue it on. F-22 or F-35, you'd be like, I can't build that out of a cup. But back then, the aesthetic is very forgiving for a process where you just smash things together and it doesn't matter that it's precise. It doesn't matter if it intersects. It doesn't matter what scale it is. That's the power of 3D in my mind. I don't have to sketch. I can just sit there and experience it in 3D space and rotate and consider. And then I go, hey, okay, so... But a lot of it is this. But I don't sketch when I do 3D. Very, very, very rarely do I solve something on paper, which is a bit of a problem in terms of communication because I can't share anything. It's just in here.
Where do you start when you come to kind of add a bit of like color and texture and design to these?
I would have some really rough standard metallic textures with a bit of gunk on it. They would either be completely tileable. And then I also have a whole bunch of trim sheets where there's bands of relevant detail that can be looped around surfaces and stuff like that. So you get paneling and things like that. And then I go, hey, choose that cylinder, unwrap it, or cylindrical map it, choose that plane, planar map it. I don't unwrap stuff. I just cylindrical or planar map it, and box map it. And then that's a starting point that usually then tells me very clearly what it needs. Oh, clearly this surround needs an accent color. We unwrap that and map it to that part of the trim sheet that has the color band, for instance. But I prefer to use as few textures as possible. That's a game habit, right? You save memory. But also, it's a clean material sheet because there's not a lot of materials. So it's very, very efficient. And also, it means I don't have to worry about it too much. It just works out of the box. And if you download my models or my packs or whatever, you can just take that texture and use it. I have 2-3 textures I've been using for 4 years now. And it's fine. As long as you keep within the same aesthetic, obviously. It makes it incredibly easy to continue.
What's the kind of process like refinements? Do you just kind of go and see where it takes you? Or do you kind of look at it and go, let's change this? Is there a purpose for these vehicles that kind of inspire the change?
Usually I don't start with a purpose, which is why I get so much critique for people going like, what even is this, man? What you're not being rational. I'm like, fuck you, I don't have to be rational. You can be rational. Yeah. I fool around and then the shapes will start talking to me and then I go, oh, this is clearly a fighter. I might do a body and then I have 2 different cockpits, a small one and a bridge for a big one. And I place it and I go like, does that work better as a big ship or as a small ship? And then I make the call right there and I go, oh, it's a fighter then, I guess. And then I'll build on that idea, stretch, modify, change, come back, do another test, like scale test, or maybe I stretch it or whatever. So I keep open as long as I can, and I keep exploring avenues out to the left and right.
Do you prefer the big heavy ones or the little kind of TIE fighter-y?
I prefer the in-betweens. Capital ships are okay. Fighters, a little bit boring. I prefer the chunky four-man crew research, something that can do all kinds of things that you're not quite sure what it is. But I like when the shape language start to revert itself or challenge itself. So I do a box and put wings on it. And people go like, that's not right. I'm like, I know it's not right. That's why I like it. And that means you can make designs that make less sense, but make you feel more. And that's what excites me. I don't really appreciate the whole dad logic. Actually gravity, actually atmosphere. I'm like, I know, bro.
And then it just becomes a very technical science lesson or whatever. And, we just want to make cool shit and have fun.
Yeah, it's like they don't understand that it's fantasy and it is emotional design first. And then there's a thin veneer of logic, even following the World War II footage, right, that Lucas was inspired by. So it's like they misunderstand the whole point. That's not why you like Star Wars. You like Star Wars because it speaks to your soul, bro. And the fact that you want to argue science, go somewhere else and do that. Plenty of places where that belongs, but certainly not Star Wars. Fuck off.
Yeah. Completely agree.
At least the veneer of logic should serve the emotion, not the other way around. That's super, super important.
Did you collaborate with Jammer and Big, Medium, Small?
Absolutely. So after a few years of dabbling like this, and I was very active on Instagram at the time, my goal is really to inspire people to dream themselves away, like I did when I was a kid. By chasing and measuring a follow account that grew, I was doing it every day and got immensely better over a few years. And then that meant that Jama and the team noticed my stuff and then asked if I wanted to collaborate. I'm a big fan of Jama's work. So I was like, yeah, man, let's do that. I have something we can start from. So that pack is based on my own kit bash model kit, whatever, right? So if you see my stuff and you get the pack, you can build the stuff, technically speaking, at least. Yeah.
I love just going through like the Big, Medium, Small website and seeing their packs and what they do with like presenting. When you're working with those guys, do they take it and render it?
Well, I mean, I did a few renders like that for the pack, but before that I had done some video stuff. I was doing a big Carillion type design, and I had done sort of keyframing of me walking around a model, and I was recording the sound of myself walking and creaking and breathing and whatever, so it sounded really like real, and I put that on the video. And I think that's part of what they saw. And I was trolling internet, and I was like, hey, it's ready for the shoot, and people were like, whoa, awesome.
It tricked us, Rasmus. We were like, oh my gosh, this guy, is this a new ship for a movie? What? And you can see the blue screen,
the
what's
tripods,
the studio.
I've been using the blue since, and I'm using that as a key color in what I'm doing myself, and I'm using that on YouTube and stuff. So I'm building a visual presence around that blue color to sort of hit it home that there's a retro sci-fi aesthetic happening, and you can probably expect that.
Let's go on to the world building. Obviously, you art director, you create these worlds. What kind of comes first? Can you create a ship and then build a world from it?
I have work damage on that topic, so you're asking me that thinking it's a little question. I'm like, it's 3 questions in one. What are you talking about? So if I can try and break that apart first, I would say oftentimes, let's say you go on our station, you find a cool spaceship lands on a ruined planet. You're like, cool, that's world building, right? It tastes like it or it smells like it, but you don't have to put thought into it. We all learned from Blade Runner, Sid Mead, we learned from Lucas and art department on Star Wars, right, about layering and time. And both of those sci-fi worlds share, in particular, that it's an old world that has existed for a long time. And for Star Wars, it's about the ruins and the cultures of old that has now, they coexist with the future. You can hint at those notes without actually doing the work, and that'll be inspiring to people. And that's good enough for a piece of concept art, oftentimes. Is there a conflict? Is there a problem that the people in the images are solving outside of frame, whatever? Have half of it inside, half of it outside, so people are allowed to think. That's concept art, and that's evocative imagery. It's not really world building. World building is more where you have a story, you have something you're saying, you have a reason why that's happening, you have a poetic take on how you show how that is happening, you decide how obvious you want that to be for the player or the viewer, and then you start that whole spiraling of trying to hook things on what's the thematic meaning and how does that support the question the project is posing. The concept art can inspire those questions, and then you go answer them and build upon that idea. So the concept art can inspire that, but it isn't that by itself. Thankfully, it's freer than that, but it's not the same thing. When I do concept art, I tend to do as many little hints as I can, but I certainly don't answer it. And I certainly don't answer it on purpose because, first of all, I like art that doesn't answer it for me.
You can let the viewer answer the questions for themselves and build their own world in their head. It's really interesting to just have your bit of input and insight to the world building. Let's go into the Blender world. Let's talk EEVEE cycles. What kind of things do you do to make your vehicles and ships look so good?
Yeah, sure. So when I started, I had an old Power Mac cheese grater.
Yeah, classic.
Dual Xeon with whatever. Radeon card or something, whatever. I could only render stills and cycles, so all the animation was done in EEVEE, including the blue screen stuff and all that.
Yeah.
EEVEE. And of course, because I've done games for so long, I'm like, oh yeah, EEVEE, yeah, sure. Click, 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 click. Had to relearn the C depth thing about how many steps C buffer you have. So if you scale the world too big, everything starts to fail. I'm like, oh yeah, right. I remember the sorting issues. Yeah, okay. Hadn't been in Engine for a while then. So all the early stuff animation stuff is done in EEVEE, and I'm very comfortable with that. Yeah, real-time engines have been my business for 10 years at that time. So again, I could do things in EEVEE that felt natural, but for people there who come from the other world, they're like, EEVEE is bullshit. I'm like, no, it's not. Just got to know what to do and how to bake lighting. And a few years back, I got a 4090 and a PC. Not a big fan of the PC, but a pretty big fan of the 4090. Then I started animating in cycles, which of course, actually, proper ray tracing and stuff was then fairly new to me. I'd only done it with stills, so I wasn't really sure how to optimize it for speed and actually render sequences, because instead of rendering one image in a few minutes, I would have to render 300 frames. And okay, that's a different beast. So I'm not an expert on that.
Well, with the 4090, you can just tick it all on, can't you, Rasmus?
Kind of. It's an insane... I'm like, 5090? I don't need that. I have an insane card right now. It's complete madness. But yeah, you can sort of almost render cycles as fast as I used to render in EEVEE.
I've not experienced a 4090 yet, Rasmus. I can only dream.
Yeah, that's an old card now.
It's an old card.
Should become available. It is certainly the heart of the computer, and then everything else latches onto that. So yeah, in terms of render stuff, I'm not really technical. I watch tutorials to try and figure that out. And again, YouTube has taught me everything I know from a technical point of view, right? Grant Abbott's tutorials about how to use Blender interface-wise and all that stuff are amazing. He's what a gent he is. I'm not aware of the tricks I do in terms of rendering, not really. I use K-cycles a lot for cycles to renders and stills and animations now, and that's a little bit faster. But mostly, a bunch of the post nodes are brought back into the main menu, the render menu. So it's a different build of Blender that you launch standalone. And in there, you have all your bloom settings and your noise and your bit of grading and some lensing. You have some barrel distortion. You have some chromatic aberration. And I like my renders to be a little overdone. I have a bunch of technical arts friends, and they're like, Rasmus, you need to turn that shit down. And I'm like, no,
I like it.
And also, of course, when you're on social media or Instagram, you can overdo it a lot because otherwise it won't translate. It'll be too subtle.
Oh, yeah.
And so I like grime and grunge. And so I use K-cycles to really pump up the disco juice in the renders. Yeah.
So K-cycles, is that something I'm missing, or is that the default standard cycles pack, or is that an additional?
No. K-cycles is an add-on that is made to speed up cycles, to make it quicker for older machines.
Oh, is it?
It's using Blender's compositor, but it's rewired to be checkboxes in the render pane. That's why it's a separate build. But it's using Blender's internal business. So somebody else could replicate the same look in the Blender, but I just haven't gotten there. I'm still on the shaders. Haven't gotten to post there.
Is there any other add-ons that you enjoy using to get your results, Rasmus?
Camera Shake from Hubert, SCI-FI. I use a few different lens flare add-ons. I don't remember what they're called. Flares Wizard. And then they clash with K-cycles, so I have to render out separate passes because whatever. Stupid, super annoying. So I don't use it quite enough, but there are so many cool add-ons. I have all the modeling add-ons installed, but I haven't gotten into them because I'm so terrible at modeling. I wouldn't even know how they would benefit me because I'm so bad. I'm so bad at modeling that I'm like, why is this smart? So that's why I smash pieces together.
Yeah. Are you fine with overlapping, intersecting meshes? That's absolutely fine. Chuck it together.
If you can't see it, it doesn't matter. Of course, it matters for games if you want to optimize and things like that. But my textures are so low memory that I don't care. But I think it's my brain type is like, I care about what's on screen, not how it's made. I don't get any pleasure from good topology at all. It doesn't turn me on in any way. That's my viewpoint. And I know there's reasons why not to have that, but I just can't care about it. I just don't care about it.
The amount of times that we've worked on shots where it's like, don't worry about it. It's just going to be blurred. There's going to be fog. It's going to be out of focus.
When I hear about how many mega trim sheet atlases, whatever, I don't even know what the words are, on transformers, I'm like, why though?
Yeah.
And I genuinely mean that. So there's somebody there that should say, stop. Take it back a notch. No.
That's what I love about when we first discovered Ian Hubert. He's sitting in with an audience of 3D artists, skipping through on the slideshow, and he's like, well, it's in the background. You're not going to notice it. I'll just project it on there. There's no polys. It's just a flat plane. Chuck it, blur it. It's all good. That works. That looks cool. And you can see the audience going, that is so right. Like, we're getting so caught up in the finer details that you don't have to sweat them too much,
No, most of the time when you talk to 3D artists, they go, yeah, but then I would have to cheat. And I'm like, all of it is cheating.
Everything's a cheat.
What are you doing? Yeah. So there's a mindset thing where I think the 3D art world leans to the left brain, whatever, the opposite of mine, which means that they can plan, they can execute, they can care about topology, they can oversee big, complicated problems, they can go in meticulous detail and care about each detail equally across time, which is insane and amazingly usable a lot of the time, and amazingly more useful than my type of brain. Opposite that, a lot of the time it is overdone, overcalculated, overthought. You have to have both perspectives at play and meet in the middle to make sure you use the correct method for the correct problem. And I think that's part of why I can turn out stuff real quick, because I don't care where I don't need to care. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. If people sit at home and they do their thing, they should do their thing, whatever makes you happy. If it takes you a year to build a perfect something, do that. I don't want to. So I do something else. But I would still say that oftentimes we tend to overdo things a lot. So that's still my standpoint, but I acknowledge that there's a reason for that mindset to exist, for sure, and it's very valid, right?
It is important to let people know, especially when they're like learning 3D. It could get quite overwhelming with the amount of things that you need to learn or need to know,
100%, yeah.
There's so much. But do you need to learn it? Do you need to know it?
That's what I'm saying, like Blender is made by coders. Of course it is. But, I plug in a modifier and I'm like, what? No, you got to choose the route. I'm like, why? Just do the thing. Like Max would do it for you. And you're like, yeah, probably. And then you can modify your way if you want something different. Blender's just like waiting for you to do the math brain stuff. And I'm like, give me the thing. I have a friend who's learning Blender a few years back. He's being taught by a more technically minded person. And he was like, it's really hard.
It doesn't have to be.
I showed him like, no, move the object, push G, and then you drag and push middle mouse button in the direction you want to drag it. And then it snaps to that direction. And he was like, yeah, no, I don't know where X and Y and Z is in my 3D. I don't sit here with a 3D space in my brain when I maneuver in the world. And I realized then that thankfully Blender allows you to be right-brained, loose and goose. The fact that you can drag and snap rather than G, okay, X, I guess, move.
I skipped all that when I was learning about that. I remember more of a visual person rather than a technical.
The wonderful thing then is that the software allows for both, right? So it allows you to be who you are with your oddities and weirdness, and then go in and do the thing. And that's amazing. So when I see people use, just the mathematical terms in the shader nodes, or of course, geometry nodes, I'm like, what?
Same. There's a video that I can just follow and just get by. I'll just click what I'm told to click and not think about.
Yeah, for sure. I've learned 18 things that I've forgotten again immediately. How to do cloth sim and bake it. I'm like, I don't know. I don't have a slightest idea.
I'll check a YouTube video again.
Yeah, so that's a bummer. But at the same time, you don't have to store it properly in your brain, so you can maybe remember other things. I don't know. Maybe. Unlikely. The advice I have to offer is don't look at your spec map or your roughness map or whatever. Look at how it looks, and then go in and you take your color ramp and stuff again and play with it there and look at the render, look at it and see, okay, now the reflection looks good. Focus on how it looks, not what it is. Super, super important, because then you would spend all your time sitting there with the values and it still looks shit and you don't know why. So train your ability to see what looks good, and then the rest will follow in service of what looks good, rather than it'll look mediocre, but at least everything is perfect and correct.
It's definitely a different approach, isn't it, when you're coming from a technical approach to a creative approach?
But like I say, of course, I'm surrounded by people who are the opposite brain than me.
Yeah.
And goddamn, do I need them, right? I saw the whole picture and they saw the details. So we need each other to get that perfection. I push beyond what should be done and they rein it back in so everything becomes back in order, right? And that's where I think it's really beneficial to be aware of who you are and what brain you have. I'm pretty sure you know who you are. But if you don't, ask for advice, ask for friendly, hardcore reviews by people who know you, so that you can know yourself, and that'll make you much more effective because you know what people you need to surround yourself with to be successful.
That's great advice. Do you have any more like key bits of advice for people in the 3D world?
Be aware of what makes you excited and happy. And if you feel like you get stuck, understand that and say, okay, I'm probably not focused on the right thing then. Don't make a teapot. Don't make a donut. Don't make a donut. Make R2-D2.
Don't get technical with me.
Whatever makes you happy, go model that, because that's the only way you can learn. So it's so self-helpy and classic, but it's really true.
Yeah.
Go with the path that excites you, because that's the best fuel and armor you have against the problems on your way to becoming what you want to be. And it's hard as hell, and you just got to keep going, keep pushing. So when I talk about being a graphic designer and then going, but dragons and spaceships though.
Yeah, that's what I love.
Wait, you can make computer games. And then that opened up for that whole avenue of just not giving a damn about what is perceived to be adult or smart or what can make you money or whatever, provided the passion is strong enough. So worry about what you're passionate about and the rest will follow. 100% sure.
Yeah.
But at the same time, because you're going to need that energy when it gets hard, and it will get hard. And it's going to be late nights and you don't want to, but you're going to have to. And I'm saying this as somebody who made 2-3 pieces a week and posted every day on Insta for 2-3 years. And that was my gym. That was training for me. Just do it. And then you get to the other side. And when you get to the other side, you're like, whew, that was worth it. It was really hard. I'm happy I did it. When I talked about this before and been asked about it before, especially when people know I have a family and everything, like, how the hell do you do that? I'm like, yeah, good question. It's tough. And you don't have to watch the last season of The Dragon Show. You don't have to. You know, what happens when you stop binging TV shows you like and instead start building worlds you like. No TV show can compare with me building something in Blender that I enjoy. Not even close. Not even close. Because I'm sitting there and I'm wielding this software. It's like a big puzzle. It's like a puzzle game. What? And so you get good at this thing, and then with that thing that's very difficult, you can get to express anything, which is insane. But you have to be invested in the mind-body process of solving problems that are way harder than you can to get to where you're going. And that's embodied journey. And that's where the magic is for you as a creator. And if it's magical for you, there's a chance that it's magical for others, which is why when you see the AI stuff, you're like, I feel nothing. I don't think the embodied feeling has been part of the creation process.
Family, professional life, personal projects. How does Rasmus juggle all 3 or 4 or 5 things, or maybe even more?
Ask my wife, yeah, and my dog, and my kids. Yeah, so it's a bunch of different things. If we start with the negative, it's selfishness to a degree. It's also a drive to want to build stuff, do something, make something. On the positive side of things, it is doing what you want to rather than what people do. Or that's what I'm saying. Don't slouch in the couch and watch a TV show if you can avoid it. Maybe you do that because you're super tired because you've been burning all day. And that's fair enough, as long as you're burning for something. If you're burning all day, but you've discovered that you can burn on 2 axes at the same time, you know when kids are done eating dinner and then they have a candy stomach that opens up for the dessert?
Oh, yeah.
And they were full before and now they're not full? Kind of like that. Then there's space for it if you choose it. You then have to negotiate with your partner. What's reasonable, what's not, what's a reasonable amount. Most guys like us, our girlfriends or wives would say, get out of your head, get out of your phone, be with me when you're with me, be with the kids when you're with the kids. And you go, okay. So there's, of course, lessons there about being present in what you're doing at the time you're doing it, which can be hard when you're a scatterbrain and all that stuff. But the thing happened, like I said, daughter got sick. I fell into Blender. My wife had started a job and she was driving herself quite hard on that front, on her own growth, on her own project in a sense. That meant she went to bed really early. And so the kids were to bed and I was like, I'm not going to bed. And then that married itself into the spark that was ignited inside me, learning something new. That's amazing. Having 4 hours, if I choose, I can watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, which I enjoy.
Love it.
Or I can do this thing. Obviously, that meant that you have to negotiate, and we had to negotiate what does a relationship look like here, and when is us time, and And I say, now we're sort of out of that, which means we have more time to each other, which means we are talking more about what we want from each other and what we expect from our relationship. And at the same time, she knows that I need this, and I love it, and I can't stop. So it's more about, you do this. Come back to me when you're ready, and then be with me, right? So I don't watch TV shows unless I really mean the TV show. I do not. Because then the weeks become months real quick. I'm so lucky that the art direction gig is amazing, really challenging. And then at home, it's just pure flow. Pure flow is probably one of the best states you can have. I'm very aware at work, and then a spirit in the evening. So you can do quite remarkable things if you're excited. I think that's the key. So if you're not excited, fix that first.
Great bit of advice, Rasmus. I really appreciate that.
By the way, I say this advice and I follow it sometimes. You know what I mean?
No,
you know
I
better
agree.
than you act, right?
Of course. That is so insightful, Rasmus, and really appreciate you going into that like personal side of things. It's really important. I think it shines a light on it for other people. So thank you. It would be great now to jump to some questions from the guys in the chat. You're going to see another face here.
We have those. We tend to have those.
Nico's in the house.
Okay.
Hey, Nico.
Hello.
Hey, man.
Okay, awesome to be here.
Again.
Is Nico like the classic callback who just requests stuff?
No.
Nico is an incredible Blender artist, 3D artist. He's done short films. He spoke at BlenderCon.
Oh, yeah. That was recently, right?
He was just one of our recent guests.
That seems like I did a lot. It doesn't seem like that for me. Awesome to see, Rasmus. So hi, first of all. I love it how you talk about like life and your approach to work in general. I see a lot of parallels in my like mentality also. So I really like this thing that there is no right way. Just do what feels right, what makes you happy. The end result is the main thing that matters. So I really see that also in me, and also to have a passion as a driver for everything that you do. So my big question would be, what is that one thing that you, I don't know, like discipline or something where you can get lost in for hours and you stop realizing that it's like 4 or 5 a.m.
All of them, thankfully. For me, it's everything from painting a texture, because I'm usually painting them.
Yeah.
I think I'm really good at entering flow state and remaining there for a while, and then coming back up for a little bit of analysis, and then jumping back in with a renewed direction or mission from the analysis. I'm not aware of this happening. It happens by itself, which also part of it, it just flows. It's like a breathing. I go from flow to analysis to flow to analysis, which means I can go for quite a while. So I do texture, I upload, update, check it, rotate, map it, go, okay, we need to go back in the texture, and then all of a sudden 2 hours have gone by with just back and forth between that. So I think in that sense, I feel very fortunate that I can enter that flow state with most of the things I'm doing. The thing that takes me out of it is modeling. I'm not enjoying modeling very much. That's a bummer for me. So I'd much rather compose objects into shapes. I'd much rather experience and evaluate and then bash my way to quick results. That's why I guess I'm a kit basher.
It's actually similar for me. I used to love modeling, but after a while, you assembled like a huge library of pieces and shaders and everything. So in the end, you get really great result with just putting things together, and then you're happy with it. So yeah, I definitely get that.
The downside is then when something complicated has to be modeled, I'm like,
how was it again?
Yeah, that's the downside. So I would say there's a limiting factor there, that there are things where when my colleagues model stuff at work, or when buddies model stuff online, I'm like, how? What? Yeah, it's amazing. But again, that's also why we're here. We're here to be amazed, right? So when we see people similar to us that have just 20% different way, we get excited, right? Because it feels unknown and potentially learnable. That the allure of that skill, right?
There's also the difference between when you work for something just for yourself, you can do it however you like. But in a studio environment, there are certain like pipelines and procedures that you have to follow. So you can't really allow oftentimes to do it your own way.
It depends, right? So I'm so fortunate that I'm an art director that I can say and do a lot of different things, and it doesn't matter if it fits perfectly into the process, because usually it gives clarity to people. Or I can say, I've modeled a quick thing. Can you please take a look at it and see if it would work? Or can you use it as a reference, as a white box for when you do your version of it or something? So I'm very, very lucky.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Nico, for jumping in and asking the question. That's
Oh, of course. Thanks for having me again.
pleasure, as always.
Bye-bye.
We have got another question from Luke Stretton.
Here we go. It was interesting in how much experiments he did in EEVEE and how he managed to get EEVEE to look as good, if not better than. I can't see the rest of the question.
Better than cycles. Was it shader experimentation, lighting, or a mixture?
I mean, it's part of the answer I gave before that I come from games, which means I'm used to the downfalls and benefits of these techniques, and I'm used to playing with post filters and things like that. So I know a little bit about bloom buffers and stuff like that. So it feels very second nature to me. But I think first and foremost, spend more time learning to observe than you spend learning what the buttons do. Because if you can't observe, none of the buttons is going to help you. If you can see what works and what doesn't, chances are you can recreate it regardless of the technology to a large extent. And then it's a question of what can you fake and what do you have to math your way out of, right? So the better you are at seeing, the better you are at evaluating what looks good, the less important the technology will be. And you'll find yourself not really caring so much about it because you can achieve what you want regardless.
It's your eye, it's your vision, it's what you take in, it's what you see. But yeah, that makes complete sense, Rasmus. So thank you. Do want to say thanks for everybody that's in the chat. Appreciate everybody that's joined. And it's been a really great session. So thanks for hanging out with us, and your time, Rasmus, is very much appreciated. Is there anything that you can plug? You've got website, you sell assets, they're amazing, you sell merch. Can you just point people in where to find you, where they can support you?
If you don't follow Technouveau on Instagram, though Instagram is dying, so who knows? ArtStation, of course, technouveau.net, which is my site. You can find out what I peddle there. But I would say first and foremost, I just started YouTubing fairly seriously. And we'll see what that becomes. But the idea there is to really inspire and empower the users' creativity, you guys, us, right through discussions about design and concepts and aesthetics and processes. Obviously, as you mentioned, I'm doing assets and all that stuff, which is a way of entertaining my nerdy, detail-oriented side and at the same time solve problems for you guys so that you can build your worlds quicker and spend more time worrying about world building. But really, it's about exactly what we're doing here, exactly what you guys are doing, Jamie and Stephen, talk about creativity, process, the human element, and the trials and perils of the creative field. So check my YouTube. That's the new place, man.
Thanks, Rasmus. And yeah, we'll catch up with you very soon. In the meantime, what are you doing the rest of the day? What's going on?
Well, now it's pick up the kids time. So now it's probably see what happens and see what the mood is and see if there's time for some more 3D computer graphics. So
nice.
Maybe taking a movie very seriously and watching that really intensely.
Nice. Well, we hope you enjoy it. I'm sure you will. Great to meet you, Rasmus. Take it easy.
You too. Thanks, guys.